Clear prop.
Star 73 is Yankee number 2 following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear Sutton. 1 Charlie Bravo, exit in runway 25, going 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and designated pilot examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
Fantastic. This week is all about weather. But before we jump into weather, Wally, we get asked a lot of questions via email. If you have questions, don't hesitate to send them to us either via social media or to our email address, bobby@behindtheprop.com, or you can send something to wally@behindtheprop.com. We've had a few questions come in lately about motion sickness, and I don't think there's a whole show around motion sickness, so we're going to take a few minutes early on here to tackle and give you some tips and tricks on motion sickness. As a kid, man, I couldn't ride the backseat of a car more than 20 miles without getting sick, and I mean really sick. I can remember times as a kid where I would drive to the airport and I would get more sick once I got on the plane. But for some reason in my adult life, it doesn't bother me anymore. Have you had any issues with motion sickness?
I had a motion sickness issue in an airplane one time. I was a very young pilot. I was building time. I worked for a company that, as a lineman, that did pipeline patrol. And I was out flying pipeline patrol with a guy one time. And he was actually the pilot, but I was with him. And I got sick. We stopped and ate lunch, and shortly after lunch, my lunch decided it didn't want to be in my stomach anymore. And luckily, we had a water cooler, and so I ruined that for the other guy. I went out the next day and bought him a new water cooler. But I was dealing with some inner ear stuff at the time. I shouldn't have been flying, but I was, because it was about 10 hours of flight time I was going to get that day. And so I went out and I flew it. So I had some, sinusy, cold type stuff going on. And I think that's what really caused it. But it's just a horrible feeling. I mean, to be stuck in an airplane, especially if you don't have a sick sack or someplace to discharge what's going to come out of your body. It's a bad situation. But I have had probably 4 or 5 check rides, and I've given well over 500. So maybe 1% of my check rides, I've had the applicants get sick.
Do you carry sick bags?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I never leave home without them.
Yeah, most of the flight schools have them as well. In all the cases, the ultimate outcome of the check ride, I think in every one of those cases was a pass, a satisfactory. They got over it and were able to complete the check ride. And I'm just thinking offhand. I can remember this happening three times, where the applicant actually had to get sick, and but they pushed through it and got the check ride done. They were always very, very embarrassed, and I always told them, I said, hey, look, don't worry about it. It
is a human thing, but boy, it is embarrassing for some reason, isn't it? So it's like, and probably for me as a man with a fairly large ego, you want to be able to be strong and overcome it, but man, there's nothing we can do as humans. Once it starts, it very rarely stops. I've flown with people before who have gotten sick to the point where they've asked me to land somewhere, and I have memories of people laying under the shadow of the wing for a good 30 or 45 minutes, and me watching the clock and thinking, oh my gosh, we got to get this plane back. And them telling me, if we get back in that plane, I'm going to be more sick. And ultimately we just had to make the go decision and go. But I've also had people not tell me they get motion sick, and they're apt to get motion sick, and then we go fly, and I'm like, why would you do this to me?
Right.
So I guess ask your passengers. I've gotten very routine now about asking people, do you normally get sick before I take them up, especially if it's their first time or they've never been up. And then I just warn them that, look, if you feel it at all coming on, let's just open some windows, open some vents, take some air in, and I'll stop doing whatever I'm doing. Because quite literally, the time that people have been sick, my flying's probably made them sick, right? So I try to show them what the glide ratio is on an airplane. And before I think about it, I pull power, and all that, they don't know it's coming, and all that motion just stops, and then inertia sets in on their ear. And then we probably put full power back in shortly later, and all that inertia goes back into their body. So I think it's, if you have a tendency to fly with people that do get sick, it's try to eliminate all the things that might cause it, right? Anything that would make their inner ear do gymnastics while you're pretty much flying straight and level. And to me, that I'm thinking rudder pedals, any kind of slipping or sliding, the less of that you're doing, the better off you are, meaning fly as coordinated as you can fly, and try not to change too much. Rudder trim would be ideal in these scenarios.
Yeah.
Make sure that the plane's trimmed so that you're not fighting and kind of doing this roller coaster of 50 feet over and over and over again. That's probably not going to be good for somebody who's motion sick. And then stick with standard rate turns that are pretty shallow and slow, and don't pull back on the yoke in the turns, and by all means don't show them what a power on stall is. That's probably not going to help either.
Yeah, I one of my first professional flying jobs, flying as a CFI and flying charter for a company. My boss told me, he said the best compliment you'll ever get as a pilot is when someone says smooth flight, when they use the word smooth.
Yep.
And I used to, my goal was to be able to fly a flight with the passengers never knowing that we turned the airplane. And so they didn't feel anything. They didn't feel any sensations. And, that's kind of my goal is you just want it to be like they're sitting in their living room for a couple hours, however long the flight is. And I will say this to people who maybe want to explore the thought of learning how to fly, and they come out and maybe the first flight they do get a little queasy. Don't give up. Don't give up, because there are remedies we'll talk about here in a second. There are ways to combat this, and just because you get sick on your first flight, please don't give up on it. It's something that's worth fighting for. One thing I use, and I carry it in my flight bag, I have a little jar of peppermint oil, and I use it a lot. I just put it on my upper lip, just mainly because I like the smell of it. But when I've had some people in the airplane who have not felt well, and in the case where all those people who have actually gotten sick, I've given them this peppermint oil, and you just kind of dab a little bit on your finger and rub it on your upper lip right underneath your nose where you're smelling this peppermint. And it's really good for everybody in the airplane, because if they do get sick in a bag, sometimes the fragrance isn't the most appealing. So if you put this peppermint oil right under your lip, you're smelling peppermint. So it covers up the bad smell, I guess. But I have it with me all the time. It works very well. And you had mentioned somebody chewing ginger gum.
Yep, a friend of mine and an old partner of mine used to use, and still does today. He won't fly without chewing ginger gum for about 30 minutes before he gets in the aircraft. Says it does him wonders. With a little bit of research for today's show, there's all kinds of home remedies out there that talk about ginger tea, ginger gum. If you've never tried that, you might incorporate that into your repertoire of ideas to help you feel better. There's a lot of over-the-counter stuff that might not be good for crew members, so things like Dramamine and other things that might make you drowsy if you're a crew member, they are not approved by the FAA. Make sure you do check medications and things like that if you are part of the crew before you take them, but maybe for passengers, some of that might work. And as Wally said, I think I've seen it through thousands of students that come through here, where if someone does get sick on the first flight or two, there is something that the body learns to overcome that, right? The body starts to learn that this isn't, I'm not confused. It knows how to correct for it. It starts to, I guess in some way the body knows what an uncoordinated plane feels like, and that it is still kind of straight and level. The more coordinated the pilot can be, the better it's probably going to be for passengers. But I think there is something where the body starts to overcome it, and it doesn't take forever. It's normally the fourth or fifth flight where they all tell me that it's gotten better. I think that's them being more in control too. So when they start steering, they're more aware of the turn coming. I would even say if I'm flying in approach mode with autopilot and I'm not in control of that yoke and that it starts to turn a little bit in anticipation of a turn, I'm like shocked, and I feel it in my body for a second before. When I use my hands, I don't feel that at all because I know it's coming, right? So I'd also say the autopilot seems to turn fairly aggressively compared to what maybe my turn might be, a little shallower and less bank. So try to be in control of the aircraft if you are in the crew. And maybe if you have a passenger who's a little queasy, if they're up front, maybe let them steer for a while if you don't have autopilot. It would probably do wonders for them. You then just have to be careful that you're not on the rudder pedals, because them being in control and not knowing why the plane's crabbing or turning would be very bad for their motion sickness as well.
Yeah.
And then there's all kinds of bands and remedies out there that talk about pressure points. You could probably try all those. I think the key message is ginger gum or ginger tea, peppermint, as Wally mentioned, a peppermint oil of some sort. And just hang in there. It probably will pass, and you'll get to enjoy flying very, very soon for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it may have to do with nerves. I know the one young man I had on a check ride that got sick multiple times on the check ride. He as when we landed, he was extremely embarrassed. And I was telling him, don't worry about it. But he said that this had never happened to him. So nerves at the check ride. It was hot. It was a hot weather day. But we have 250 days a year of hot weather days here in Houston, so it wasn't that big a deal. I know he had flown in hot weather before, but I think couple that with the nerves of a check ride day, I think is what caused him some issues.
Yeah, the last thing I'll throw out is, you probably shouldn't eat a big meal prior to going, right? I think I've heard this. You should have some nutrition, but eat something light. Eat something that's not going to give you a lot of indigestion. I think we've all been there before where we started feeling a little bit sick. The more and more you think about it, the worse and worse it gets, right? So if you can do things to eliminate the onset of some motion sickness, I think the better off you'll be. Remember air, remember vents, remember windows. Get as much air into the cockpit as you can. It'll probably help as well. And if you haven't ever tried it, try the peppermint oil. And then hopefully your next flight will be without the use of a sick bag. So let's jump right back into weather. One last thing, I guess. If you have other tips and tricks that have helped you and your passengers, please shoot those our way. We'll get them into an episode in the future. Give you full credit for that tip and trick, and hopefully we'll make other aviators out there less motion sick. So into weather. We get tons and tons of questions. And weather, as you know, in aviation could be 400 episodes on the Behind the Prop podcast. So this week, we're going to take a pretty high-level approach and just talk about some generalities. I think no matter where you're at in your aviation career, you're probably thinking of weather a little differently than other pilots, and that's a good thing. As we get better and stronger in our pilot skills, we probably get deeper and more into weather. But we're kind of thinking between private and instrument here at a high level, and we'll dip into other areas of aviation. But I can remember being a private pilot, Wally, and we talk about this a lot. How did I think about weather early on and compared to how I think about today? I think early on it was like, are there clouds in the sky? Because there's some rules that say I can't fly in those clouds. Right. And as you get a little smarter, you get to learn really how far off the ground are these clouds and what impact does that mean for me. And then I started learning, if there are clouds, it's probably a smoother day. If there's a layer of clouds, it's probably a really smooth day. I just got to avoid getting too close to those as it relates to altitude. And then as I matured, I think I started thinking more about visibility, right? We had a show last week. We talked about this quote unquote cancel culture of flying, where we just want to be as conservative as we can be. How many times do clouds come up as you're have an applicant in front of you and they're like looking up going, they're 2,800. I don't know if we should go today. Does that happen a lot on your check rides for private and instrument?
It happens a lot. Yeah. And, it's up to the applicant to cancel. I mean, I think maybe if they read me a little bit more, they could kind of see some body language from me, whether I think we ought to go or not. But ultimately, it is the call of the applicant whether we're going to fly or not. And I can't tell you how many check rides get discontinued that I really think could have happened, or at least a good portion of the flying portion could have happened.
Yeah, so I would think if the visibility's fine, you could probably do a full check ride with 3,500 feet clouds AGL. Yeah. Well,
for sure, a private instrument could easily be done in that situation. For commercial, we have to do accelerated stalls, and so we have to be 3,000 feet above the ground to do that. So we have a little bit more limitations, but there's always the option to get above the clouds.
Right.
If it's not an overcast layer, or if it is an overcast, there's always the option to get if the person is instrument rated, a pop-up IFR and get above them. So there are options.
So early on, this is me, but I would think most pilots would relate. I think I thought all about clouds. Driving to the airport for a private lesson, I would be looking and thinking, is my CFI going to want to fly in this? I get a little bit more mature, and I start deciding whether I'm going to fly in this. And then I started learning a lot more about visibility, because if I'm willing to fly in lower clouds, that probably creates more visibility concerns. And then the winds come up more often than not with a lot of a deteriorating visibility. Probably means the winds are fairly calm for sure, because you learn that the winds will blow bad weather out of here if it is clear. And then I think you start taking your instrument training, or you get involved in instrument training, and you start really thinking a lot more about en route stuff, right? And I think private, I can remember, and correct me if you feel differently, but I can remember looking at ForeFlight or some app like Windy or something that's going to show me the radar. And as long as there wasn't anything red or yellow to the west, we were going to go practice. And if there was red and yellow to the west, we'd look north or south and make a decision where we could practice, right?
Right.
But if you're an instrument pilot, you're probably going somewhere. You're probably filing a flight plan. If that's on your route, you probably can't choose a different city to go to. You have a mission, a destination to go to. So you start thinking about diverting. Can I divert around that? Can I pick a route that doesn't take me through that? Will ATC let me divert? I had the opportunity recently to fly in a jet up front for the first time, and a jet will go around 35-mile storm like nothing, whereas a Cessna,
right,
it's probably, you're thinking about 30 or 45 minutes of fuel.
Right.
That's a bigger deal. But I was shocked at some of the massive storms. There's storms from 5,000 to 40,000 feet. You're just going to go around those big thunder boomers, think nothing of it, and you quite literally get to see them way before you get to them.
Yeah.
Whereas in a Cessna, you just see weather. You don't know really what it is.
Right.
And real-time radar helps quite a bit. But I think you're thinking en route and destination. And so destination, you're thinking, I probably was thinking, can I land, or legally do I have to file an alternate? Those were the big top two questions. And en route is, can I safely get there, whether I have to divert or not? And I started making a lot of no-go, go decisions around what I was learning based on really what I could see out the airport window here and what my destination was telling me, more often than not based on a trend, right?
Right.
So you grow up to that level, right? What's the next stage? It's really rain and convection, right? So is there a warning, convective warning? Is there actually a convective segment going on where I'm at? I'm probably not flying anywhere if there's an active segment.
Yeah.
And is there one en route? Because now you're not just talking clouds and water, moisture. You're talking rain and convective stuff, which could be hail, thunderstorms, lightning.
Right.
None of us want to fly any aircraft into that stuff, right?
Correct.
What do you think about flying a single piston engine plane through a little bit of rain, Wally?
I think it's a very good experience. It's I can remember the first time flying a Cherokee 140 in rain. I was two of my college buddies. We were flying over to Shreveport, Louisiana, to interview some guys at the flight service station in Shreveport, Louisiana, for a school project. And we were coming home, and these two guys were both a little bit more advanced in their training or in their flying than I was. And we're coming home, and it was still daylight. There were some higher clouds, and I started hearing a crackling sound in the airplane. Almost sounded like something in a frying pan or something like that.
A little water and oil, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and to me, I really was thinking that the airplane was coming apart. Something was cracking in the airplane, and I wasn't quite in panic mode yet, but I was getting there. I was thinking, what is this noise? And one of my friends said, oh, we're getting a little rain. And I just remember thinking, yeah, we're getting a little rain. I'm thinking, I didn't admit to him that I didn't know that he was talking about, but if Andy Taylor happens to be listening to this podcast, he's the manager of the ATC facility up in Denver, Colorado. If Andy Taylor happens to listen to this podcast, I'm confessing to you, Andy, that when you said that was rain, I had no idea what it was. But it's a really good experience, and just seeing what rain looks like, because what rain looks like when you're flying out on a VFR day and there's just scattered rain showers in the airplane, it just looks like a cloud that goes all the way to the ground. Mm-hmm. And basically that's a little rain shower.
And so you can fly, I would say let's don't fly in moderate to severe precipitation for any length of time, because that's going to create a visibility problem, but especially for a VFR pilot. But we just wouldn't want these engines to be exposed to that much water for that period of time. But some light precip, some moderate for a short period of time it's not going to hurt the plane or you.
No.
Obviously make sure you check your icing levels, but the rain is not a problem. Convective, avoid it. I think the rule of thumb in the Pilot Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge says 25 miles from a thunderstorm. Right. If you see an anvil coming out of a big thunder boomer out there, there's probably a lot of hail coming out of that up there at altitude, and that hail could find its way all the way to the ground. So run, avoid the convective stuff for sure, but a little bit of rain probably not going to be a problem. I mentioned ice. Do you think about ice on a day like today, Wally? It's probably going to be 95 degrees out there. Are you thinking about ice on your aircraft at all?
In these little airplanes, for the most part, probably not. We do talk about this on check rides, though, about standard temperature lapse rate and about what altitude, where is the freezing level. You need two things for ice. You need water and you need freezing. You need the temperature. So one without the other is not going to form ice. It is nice to know where the freezing level is, and it's really pretty simple. The standard lapse rate is 2 degrees, so that's 2 degrees Celsius. So take the temperature divided by 2, and that's about where it is. If it's 32 degrees Celsius, about 16,000 feet. Again, that's a standard lapse rate. And, you can look at freezing level charts and stuff within your weather briefing that you can get.
But in the big jets, you definitely would be thinking of icing today.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to go through that stuff, and you're going to have moisture, and you're going to have to turn on your anti-ice systems, whatever those might be.
Yeah, I mean, we use them all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it is a lesson to be learned. We live in Houston. We don't think about it much. That it does come to fruition in the winter around here. That the surface temperature might be 45 degrees. Very realistic. That's in Fahrenheit. Very realistic that we could get something that we could fly at 3,000 feet and even have it get to zero up there. or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, where we could see some formation of ice. That's the real deal, and we had to pay attention to that. Yeah. Even if we're just going out and practicing, if there is some visible moisture, we need to be thinking about that for sure.
Yeah. One thing I like to do with applicants is I like to be in a situation where we can see outside, not where you're in a briefing room that doesn't have any windows, but I will, whether we're standing in the hangar or out on the ramp or anything, I will just flat out say to them, well, what's the weather right now? And I like to see their reaction, because some of them will actually look up in the sky and they'll say, well, it looks like we got clear skies. And I'll say, well, what do you think the wind is? And they'll kind of feel things. And more times than not, they get it right just by saying, oh, it looks like it's out of the north at, I'm going to guess 7 knots. Okay. What do you think the temperature is? Oh, it feels about like this. Okay. And so right off the bat, just by looking, we have an idea of what the ceiling is. It's kind of hard to judge visibility on the ground, but we have an idea of what the winds are. We have an idea of what the temperatures are without ever looking at any kind of electronic device. So open your eyes. The weather is there. If you can look at it, look at it. One thing I like to say is when I walk out of my back door in the morning and I'm heading out to the airport, again, and this has to do with knowing your geographical location. We're down here on the Gulf Coast, and if I walk out of my back door of my house and the temperature is unseasonably cool, which in the summertime it's still hot, but you can tell, the wind is probably out of the north that day. And I know if I'm coming out here to this airport, we're probably going to be taking off on runway 35 today. I haven't even looked at any weather, but I'm already thinking, I think we got winds out of the north today. Winds out of the north here generally mean less clouds. It's probably clear today, because if the winds are out of the south, we have warm, moist air coming over the Gulf, is going to cause some clouds. So as I'm driving to the airport, I'm thinking, well, gee, we're doing an instrument check ride today. I need to find a precision approach to the north today rather than to the south, which is where most of our approaches go around here. So open your eyes, know your local area, and don't forget. I mean, checking the weather doesn't mean pulling it up on an app and reading some encoded message. Sometimes it's just looking out the window.
Yeah, so that's a great segue into how do we plan for weather. Again, at a high-level view today about weather on this show, I think the intent is to think big picture down smaller until we get to the airport view. And that's probably destination and where we're leaving. And so Wally just gave you a bunch of good tips on what to do if you're at your local, if you're close to your local environment. It's look out, feel the weather, make some educated guesses, and then of course look at what the weather station is reporting. If you have a big airport nearby, maybe they have better weather reporting. Maybe they have other live people there. If you're at a non-towered airport and you're just listening to a ASOS or an AWOS, you might not get everything you might get from a towered airport. But the key is to start thinking before we just think about the destination. I think it's big picture. And I think I've learned a lot as working on my flight instructor certificates to think what is big picture. And I've met a few more airline pilots that help me think big picture. If you're flying from Houston to Denver, you're not just thinking about what's Denver's airport and what's Houston's airport. There's a lot of mountains, winds, rain, frontal lines, frontal segments, big storms, little storms. David, our chief pilot here, always talks about kind of the west corner of Texas is known for its thunderstorms because all that wind and the jet streams moving from westerly coast to the Rocky Mountains, churning over the Rocky Mountains and then hitting a lot of dry, hot air in Texas. And there's a lot of thunderstorms out there. So you're thinking big pictures. Where's that frontal line? Where's the temperature change? Is there a high pressure? Is there a low pressure out there? And we might not be thinking about that in GA every day in our little Piston aircraft, but you can take that and know that if I'm planning to take a big trip tomorrow from Houston to Austin in a Piston aircraft, and I look big picture and there's a front in New Mexico, it's fairly likely that that front will be in Texas tomorrow, and I should be taking those things into consideration. Multi-day planning, you'll get better and better at these things, but look big picture, check out the trends. There's a couple storms out in the oceans right now as we're recording this that can impact a lot of weather around the country. If there's a big tropical storm coming up through the Gulf of Mexico and a front coming from New Mexico, there probably isn't going to be a whole lot of flying in the next 36 hours from now. It's probably going to put a big stall out there of weather over the city of Houston, and we're going to get a lot of rain. That's just things you start learning as a pilot. I joke, I think part of becoming a pilot is partially becoming a weatherman or a weatherwoman, and I think you learn a lot about what's going on in the weather for sure.
Right.
What's do you have one weather story you could share with us, Wally, from your GA days that maybe something surprised you that we could help the listeners with?
Well, as I'll give something away that a lot of people struggle with. I will say I'll take an applicant outside on a check ride and I'll say, okay, what do you think the cloud coverage is? And they'll look up and they'll say scattered, broken, or clear, or overcast. I have the four choices, and I would say in about 85% of the cases they get it right. It's hard to judge height above the ground, and I'll admit that. I mean, I'll walk out one day and I'll go, oh, gee, we're not going to be able to fly today, and I check the weather, and it's 8,000 overcast. All those clouds are 8,000 feet in the high. Okay, not an issue. But almost everybody can judge the amount of obscuration, the scattered, broken. Almost everybody is pretty good with the wind, especially if you're at an airport where there's a windsock. Everybody's pretty good with the temperature, and so I say, okay, well, suppose we have no idea what the altimeter setting is. How could we find out what the altimeter is? And it's very simple. If you're sitting in an airplane, you set field elevation and you read it. And that's going to tell you what the altimeter is. And a lot of people are not familiar with doing that at all. And what I use it for, and I'm not sure what this. I'm not sure if this would really change anything. But if I get into my airplane that's been in my hangar and it hasn't flown in maybe a week to 10 days. And, our airport elevation at my home airport is about 150 feet. If I look at my altimeter and it's reading minus 700 feet, and I have to change my altimeter significantly, what that tells me is that there's been a significant change in the weather since this airplane has last flown. Now, most of the people flying at flight schools, you don't get to see that because the airplane just came in and it's going right back out when you get in, and so there's just very minor changes in the altimeter. But that kind of tells me what has happened, and if there's been significant pressure changes, there may be significant temperature changes. And if there's significant temperature changes, one thing I'm going to be very much more aware of is checking for water in my fuel tanks. Because when I sump the tanks, I'm going to be very, very aware of looking for that with large temperature changes. So we can do so much weather reporting or forecasting, if you will, just by looking out the window, and feeling things.
Well, with that, go outside, look out the window, see if it's a good day for you to fly wherever you are today. Think big picture to small picture. Think about avoiding convective stuff. Think about understanding clouds and visibility. As always, fly safe and stay behind the prop.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at BehindTheProp.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.